You know that individual I'm getting ready to bring up is an individual that I have a lot of respect for, because coming in as a brand new Toastmaster, and I feel I'm new again, you know, because I've been away from it for about a year and a half, but he was one of the, I can say, a mentor. You know, I paid attention to how he conducted business and the way that he presents and some of the speeches that he comes up with. So I'm really excited to see what he has in store for us tonight. And the person I'm talking about is Tim. And he's going to be sharing a 10 to 12 minute speech. And I apologize, I do not have the title.
Bird in the hat.
Ooh, that's, I'm going to be sitting on the edge of my chair. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters are very welcome guests. Got to warn you, I'm about to do something that, if you're honest with yourselves, you've done this too. Or you've been with somebody when they've done it. At the very least, you know somebody who's done this. Freebird! Yeah, that's how we react, with laughter. That's how we react, with laughter, to that battle cry from what's become known as the redneck national anthem. But if you're anywhere near my age, you were around when Leonard Skinner's signature song was the coolest thing going. It was the hallmark of Southern rock. That bands like the Allman Brothers, Marshall Tucker, Charlie Daniels, Elvin Bishop, they all made their mark with that unique style of blues-based and country-influenced rock. But it was that group of middle school buddies from Gainesville, Florida, who were absolutely the kings of the hill. We go back to October 10th, 1976, on the campus of Iowa State University. It's homecoming weekend, and the campus is absolutely abuzz. Not only is it homecoming weekend, but the homecoming concert that weekend was featuring Leonard Skinner. They were on the road in support of their One From the Road album, and everybody was excited about the show coming up on Friday night. Well, I happened to be the general manager of the campus radio station at that point in time, and that Wednesday afternoon, I was in my usual weekly meeting with my program director, Kirk Elliott. Now, Kirk was a great guy. Gave himself heart and soul to that radio station. But you can tell that he was one of those guys who had grown up listening to small-town local radio. Because he was one of those guys who sounded like this. And I don't mean just when he was on the air. He sounded like this all the time. We were in the midst of our weekly discussion when the phone rang in the studio. Kirk happened to be on the air at that time. Kirk picked up the phone. Hi, KPGY! On the other end of the line was a man by the name of Greg Dodds. Greg was a PR man for MCA Records, the label that Leonard Skinner happened to record on. Well, after a few requisite pleasantries, Dodds asked Kirk, "Oh, you got tickets for the show on Friday night?" Well, Kirk and his girlfriend actually did already have tickets for the show, but he knew what was about to happen, so he told him no. Dodds said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll leave you 4 tickets at the will call window at the box office. Enjoy the show." Having tickets already, Kirk turned control of the 4 tickets over to me. We decided that our news director, Jeff Couch, our sports director, Rick Hodson, his girlfriend, Vicki, and I would make use of the 4 freebies. Now, of course, looking particularly cool was extremely important for such occasion. And for a cool, crisp Iowa autumn evening, yes, this took place in the fall, I thought my favorite black leather jacket was just the thing. And it just so happened that 2 days earlier, I found a matching black vinyl cap at the local Target store, for which I paid the enormous price of $3.95. But the two went together perfectly, and I thought I looked absolutely cool. Now you take those and you combine them with the metal frame glasses I actually wore at the time, I really looked more like a defective clone of John Lennon, but I thought I looked cool, so off I went to the show. Met the other three in the lobby of the large coliseum where they were playing. We waded our way through the crowd, got in line for the ticket window, earned our way up to that will call window, asked for the tickets for KPGY radio. The lady behind the window looked and said, "Oh, that's right. Mr. Dodds came by about 5 minutes ago and took the tickets." So you can imagine our four faces just simultaneously sinking in disappointment. It took just a split second, but 1,000 questions ran through our minds. What had happened? Why had he changed his mind? Was our radio station no longer important to him? What had happened? Then the lady behind the window added, "Oh, and Mr. Dodds left a note here. He'd like you to come around to the stage door." Well, there we stood, the quartet's head of confusion. But we made our way back out through the lobby, down the stairs, out around to the back of the huge coliseum, got to the stage door and found exactly what we expected, a guy the size of a 3-bedroom house guarding the door. So in our most polite voices, we said, "Could somebody please find Greg Dodds for us?" Well, about 15 minutes later, a very loudly dressed man with slicked back hair shows up the door and announces that he's Greg Dodds. Well, Jeff walks up, shakes his hand, introduces himself. Rick shakes his hand, introduces himself and his girlfriend. Dodds turns to me and says, "Oh, you must be Kirk Elliott." Now remember, I was only 20 years old at the time. I was about to get in the stage door of a major rock concert. I figured, I'm never going to see this guy again. If he wants to meet Kirk Elliott, he can meet Kirk Elliott. "Hi, Greg, how you doing?" Dodds ushered us in the door, gave us backstage passes, which gave us access anywhere we wanted to go except for on the stage itself. Now, Jeff, Rick, and Vicki all headed immediately out front, got into the audience to listen to the opening act as they got started. But me, I was taking a course actually in the principles of concert management at that point in time, so I thought the chance to be backstage at a major concert, what an opportunity. So I spent the next 20 minutes or so wandering through the backstage area amongst the plethora of trucks and the cabling and the lighting equipment and the instruments and the PA gear and the amplifiers, just soaking it all in. Until I finally looked around and saw a head poking out around a corner. And I thought I was in big trouble. Because that face looking at me was a classic biker type. Long, dirty blonde hair, slightly scraggly beard. I figured I'd wandered someplace I wasn't supposed to, and I was going to be ushered back out that stage door as quickly as I'd gotten in. The man walks up to me and says, "Hi, my name's Leon Wilkerson. I'm the bass player for Leonard Skinner." He had seen that I was a backstage guest and had come out to greet me. We spent a few moments chatting, and Leon said, "Well, I'll tell you what, come on back into the dressing room with us." Seconds later, I was being introduced to every single member of Southern Rock's premier band. For the next 20 minutes, Leon continued to be the most gracious host you could think of. It was my first true experience with Southern hospitality. Introducing me to everybody, telling me to make myself at home, help myself to the food that was on the buffet table. And this was no small table with a little bit of food on it. They had taken the whole deli and moved it in. Just an immense amount of food. And at one end of the table stood a 30-gallon trash can, iced down, filled with soft drinks. On the other end of the table, another 30-gallon trash can, iced down, and filled with enough Budweiser to drown a Clydesdale. So a few moments later, with a corned beef sandwich and something from one of those two trash cans in my hand, we continued the conversation until one of the stage hands came in and said, "Okay guys, 5 minutes till you're on, come on, let's go." At that point, Leon turned to me and said, "I want to ask you a favor. That cap you're wearing, I used to have one just like it. In fact, I wore it on the cover of our very first album. Somebody stole that hat. I never had the opportunity to replace it. Is there any way I could borrow that hat and wear it on stage tonight? Of course, I couldn't get that hat off my head fast enough. Gave it to Leon, he put it on and said, "Brother, you know what? I think you're the only guy I've ever met with a head as big as mine." But nonetheless, he joined his fellow band members on the way up to the stage. Off he went, wearing the hat. The show that night was absolutely everything that the audience had come to expect. Thoroughly professional. Filled with that raw, almost chaotic style of Southern rock combined with the rapidly changing Versacolor lights on the stage. It was an amazing experience and just a fantastic show. Afterwards, we were backstage again in the dressing room. Leon said, "You know what, it felt great to wear this hat on stage tonight. Can I buy it from you? How much you want for it?" Well, there I was. What was I going to say, $3.95? So I thought for a moment. I said, "Well, how about $5? The idea being with $3.95 would replace the hat and pay for the bus fare back and forth to the Target store." He said, "$5? You can't buy no hat like this for $5. Let's say I give you $25 for it." It took me a moment. But I rationalized, I'm a poor broke college student, he's a rock star, so it's not going to be any big problem if I accept his generous offer. Leon reached back, pulled out his wallet, absolutely empty. He said, "Oh, that's right. Forgot we didn't get any cash before we hit the road this morning. Oh, hang on, I'll be right back." Dashes off, goes around the corner. Thought I was going to have another chance to make a gift of it to him for showing me such a great time that night. Seconds later, he shows back up with Greg Dodson. Explains to Greg that he'd agreed to buy the hat for me for $25, didn't have any cash. Would Greg please cover it till the next morning? Greg looked at me and said, "Take a check." At that point, I just wanted things to be over with, so I said, "Sure." A few moments later, I had the pleasure of escorting the band out the stage door. We parted company as they got into their limousines and drove off into the night. I started heading back toward the campus. Leon had his hat that he had longed for so long, and I had a check for $25 in my pocket, paid in the order of Kirk Edmonds. Mr. Toastmaster.